and welcome to the Onassis Cultural Centre. I'm Lara-Johnson Wheeler and I'm moderating this panel today. I'm here representing SHOWstudio, who has collaborated with the Onassis Cultural Centre on a number of projects now and hopefully many more to come. Before we dive in and discuss Alice Potts' amazing exhibition, Sweat, I'm going to let my set of panelists introduce themselves. Zoe, let's start with you on the end and work your way back.
My name is Zowie Broach and I'm Head of Fashion at the Royal College of Art.
My name is Mower and I'm the Chief Critic at VogueRunway.com and I'm the Ambassador for Emerging Talent for the British Fashion Council.
And I am Afroditi Panagiotakou, or Aphrodite, and I'm the Director of Culture of the Onassis Foundation.
I'm Alice Potts and I'm a material researcher and a fellow of the Onassis Foundation.
I'm Stavros Karelis and I'm the founder and buying director of Machine Store.
God, guys, way to make me nervous.
That was the point.
So Alice has introduced herself obviously as a material researcher. And I think what we want to kind of unpick today is what that really means. Alice is a recent graduate at the Royal College of Art. And what she does very, very simply, if it's possible to simplify Alice's work, is create works, pieces, garments that are crystallized and that are created out of dyes, natural dyes, and crucially imbued with human sweat. So I think it's only pertinent to go to you, Aphrodite, first. And I want to ask you, so we worked a little bit together before, and it's quite clear to me that with everything that you do as Director of Culture for the Onassis, you have to have a very personal connection to the work. And I want to ask you about that connection and what that personal connection was for you about Alice.
Well, as we say, and you say, I suppose, in your country, there are no coincidences, only encounters. So the encounter does not really happen with the work, it happens with the person. And especially when it came to Alice, it was one of these cases where you can definitely see that fate is in the face. So I must say that, of course, it takes experience, and the instinct is there if you listen to it. But I think that the connection was rather rapid, as it happens with relationships that can work or they cannot. But in our case, I think it was obvious that we could share some adjectives there. We could share some words that had to do with seeing and re-seeing and thinking differently, but differently when it comes to the way we think ourselves and not the rest of the world. So I think that her sense and sensibility and the way she approached things that are waste for others became crystals for her. So I think that it was both the eyes and then her crystals that made this chemical reaction work. And here we are. Because relationships are definitely a chemical reaction.
And when you spoke first on that fateful meeting, you asked Alice what she thought of Athens.
Yes.
Do you remember what you said?
Well, I remember myself asking her all the questions that are not supposed to be asked if you want to be politically correct. So I asked her about her childhood and her mother and her father and where she came from. And it was so interesting to see that the words were there, because when I invited her over and I told her, listen, somebody is going to come here and take you fast. So before you are abducted, like Europe, or like Great Britain in that case, please come to Athens, because Athens is a very special city and you need to see it before you get yourself in a very corporate environment. So I didn't really invite her to the Cultural Centre. I wanted to invite her to Athens because we act as ambassadors of this city and of this country. So my goal actually was to bring her in the Onassis ecosystem, in the Onassis galaxy, which is related to Athens itself and all the assets that this system has, which is health, culture, education assets. So it can be a hospital that we've built. So I told her, come and see what we do in a hospital. Go on a tanker ship, come to our cultural center, come to Athens, and we'll show you the best and the worst. And when I asked her, so tell me, what do you think of Athens? And it's so interesting that everybody remembers different things, but there's something that is always in common, more or less. And what struck me was the word nature, because you told me that you think that the nature is going to be beautiful in Athens. And I think that this has to do with the way you see things, because these buildings that we have out there, with a bit of green, with the Parthenon, is our urban nature. This is our natural environment, living in a very vibrant city. And of course, you mentioned that you thought of big families, but the same way I remember your replies regarding your family and your background, and I could see that connection would work. Because, you can tell so much by somebody's story.
Move around a bit. Alice, maybe you can... Oh, there we go.
That's good. Let there be light.
Let
You
there
did
be
it.
light.
Now
Yeah.
we know who did it in the beginning.
Let there be light.
But Alice, have you found that coming to Athens, you've had that reaction that something that you've been taken by is nature, or has it been something quite different so far?
I think what I've really enjoyed is that it is so rich in culture and there is so much diversity here. But what I love, having talked to so many different people, is that everyone is so connected to Athens, whereas maybe sometimes in London it's very quick, people come and go a lot, but everyone I've met really loves being part of here, has been through the last couple of years with everything that's happened, and is really proud and connected with everything that happens here. And that's what I find so refreshing, is that there is a story behind everything, and there's not so much diversity between it, but there's just everyone is a lot more open and a lot more heartwarming. And it's, I've only been here 5 weeks, but it's the first time that I've really felt like I can actually connect to a place.
Really?
Which I really love. I know. It's coming out.
We've spent the afternoon, in fact, talking about you, Alice, and we've each, well, not myself, but each of the people in front of me have told their own version of a story, a larger story. So it would maybe be nice, particularly for me, to go back a little and ask you how that story really began. I don't mean to ask you, why sweat, but really, what was it that first kind of influenced your practice? And could you think of a moment or a time that you started thinking in that way?
I think it was, it's a lot of mixture of things that happened in my back, obviously my background of different disciplines I worked in, from maths and chemistry, but for me the biggest change was when I was in my first year at RCA, and I took part in the Biodesign Challenge, which was run by Helena Steiner, and I remember it was a 9-month-long project, and she really just opened my mind to so many things, and she was really, really supportive, and she relentlessly showed us so many different things, from different scientists, from mathematics to other people working in biomaterials, and she really spent time with everyone, really showing them this whole new way of thinking and the way of design, but also the benefits of working together as teams from other disciplines can create these whole new ways of creating work.
And that was in your first year?
Yeah.
So how then did that process develop to then, your final year, when you created pieces similar to the ones that we see today?
I think it really allowed me to really think in a different approach. For me, what was the most interesting part was learning about how materials are made. So researching how these man-made fibers were compacted or generated, and then finding replicas within nature, and then trying to create these materials in the same process. And I think that's what was the most exciting part, was that you never knew what direction any of these materials were going to go, because they were all natural, and biology has such a great and amazing thing that it's you can control some aspects, but it goes however it wants. And that's what I found the most exciting part, is that whatever you did, you just had no idea the final outcome, but each time you made something, it was just so exciting.
Zoe, obviously, you were instrumental in Alice's final year at the RCA. How was it for you to see her as a student and as someone you were mentoring kind of find that way?
Yeah, interestingly, bio and nature has its own kind of way, and I think the way you just described it there, it's interesting, because I don't think you set out with this is my process, I'm going to end up examining sweat. You seem to examine a million things. So every time you would go and see Alice, there would just be lots of different molded bodies and feet and bits of clothing, and you weren't really sure necessarily how it all connected. It was really deeply intriguing and fascinating. Sometimes she'd be there, sometimes she wouldn't, and so you're sort of trying to maybe make sure that you understand what's going on so you can support in the right direction. But I think earlier, as I was saying to you, for me, what's great about Alice is that she really listens, and she really doesn't just want to learn around the whole collision of fashion and science, which was a huge leap for her anyway, but was also about how to communicate that, for example. And I think, in a way, that comes back to what fashion is. Fashion is this complete language. That's what I always say. It's not just about the material and the construct and the complexity of the relationship to the body and your customer. That's the load, but there's a completion that you have to take on board. And I think those things can affect your design. So that could be sound or curation, could be a piece of publishing. And so I think as Alice went forward, she also really used her final year not just to further the examination of what biomaterial might be around and through fashion, but equally the curation of that and how that then fed back to some of her choices. So, it was not really clear, I would say, not in a bad way, but it was all about that exploration and opening. And in a way, that's where I come back to where I think my memory of the first meeting with Stavros and Afroditi, what was, I guess, exciting from our side, both Alice and RCA, is that their approach was about not knowing. It wasn't about we want conclusions and this is our T&C. And,
of course.
It was very much, and it was such a new kind of conversation to be having with people that is taking someone from a quite safe space and almost offering them outside with the same freedom, but in a new level. So I think those journeys are really relevant and also what's part of the natural connection.
Zoe had a preview exhibition of the graduates who were about to show. And so I went that day and and just had the chance to talk to you. We were standing by your stand with all these incredible objects, and first of all you think, oh, this is amazing, this girl has decorated her lovely little crystals on. And then when she starts, talking about the science of it, it's that's extraordinary, because that's something that's very is exceptional about the Royal College of Art. I mean, I go to, I make it sort of my interest to go to visit lots of different educational institutions, and the thing about the Royal College of Art is that it's next door almost to the Imperial College, and so to find that, and it's a specialism of yours, something about the Royal College, it teaches auto design and product design and architecture and all these things. It's an incredible melting pot. But you were working with scientists from Imperial. When you started to describe that, I thought that was like, wow, this is something I've not heard before. But can you talk about? I can imagine you going into a lab with boffins who don't know anything about fashion. I mean, how did that work?
I think it was again with the biodesign challenge that I had the opportunity to meet Imperial, and Helena was obviously really supportive with introducing me, but I got a chance to work with the whole of the engineering team, which was an amazing experience. And what I loved was that
they work in medicine, right?
Yeah. But what I found was really refreshing was that they were so excited by it, because it's completely a whole other way of thinking for them, because I think they're very used to very much repetitive things, or looking at each molecule separately but never thinking it in terms of design. And that's what I think was so exciting for all of us, is that it was the first time none of us actually knew what the outcomes were going to be. So when we started testing it, it was so exciting, not just for me but for them as well.
That's what I thought. Wow, if you're blowing their minds, this is something really important.
But it was what I found really, really interesting was that I think coming from an art school, I've always known that a lot of people have a fear of introducing themselves to science people, just from a stigma of what art might be, or coming from an art background. But what I loved about meeting the department, because they were lecturers as well as researchers, was that they were actually scared of collaborating with artists. And I found it really funny that everyone seemed to be wanting to work together, but there wasn't those opportunities at those points. But it also gives me hope that there's going to be more
And I think that's also a lot of your fearlessness, and like you would be like, oh yeah, so by the way, I've just come back from the lab and I've got all these, and you would come back with all those other layers. And I think that's part and parcel of what you'll be able to bring here in a way, is that kind of fearlessness of asking questions. And creating those relationships is key for you.
But I think for them, it must have been like a breath of fresh air, because the thing with people who are into science is that they have to be practical. Even the biggest dream is related to something practical. And in your case, it's a very personal story, as personal as it gets, actually. It's all about...
Because what I've really enjoyed is that they've been still so supportive. Like, they still email me, I'm still in contact with all of them, and they're still allowing me to use their facilities even if they're graduated, which is really...
That's why the relationship has to do with the people.
Of course.
And they all came to the RSA show, which
otherwise,
was
you
amazing.
buy an artwork, you don't give a fellowship. Otherwise, you just buy this pair of shoes and you never see the person.
And Alice, to bring us back into the room, to the exhibition, obviously there's something quite personal about the way that you've curated it along with Stavros. You've sort of created these areas that are quite representative of how you live and how you work. You have the sports machines, you have the kitchen, you have the area for dance. Moving to the kitchen, is that the way that you first started working? Is that how you sort of thought, were you working in a kitchen? Were you working in a lab? How did that happen?
I originally started working in my kitchen at home. So I think that's what the most important thing was, to try and show as much as the process and keep it as natural as possible. But for me, it was I think it can be hard for a lot of people to have access to labs as well, but to show that actually it's not...
You don't need one
You
necessarily.
don't need one.
Yeah.
There's you can develop these new things in any sort of space that you're sort of given, and that's what I wanted to do, is that not create... we didn't want to create something that was a far future concept, but something that was really real for people now.
Continuing the story a little bit, Stavros, you're the link to the Onassis Foundation and to Alice on the same, at the same time when you visited the graduate show at the Royal College of Art. You saw Alice's work and brought Aphroditi to meet her. Can you tell us a bit about that moment? Because it seems quite pivotal and also quite recent.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm a very, very lucky person because I get to know some really incredible women that are on the panel today, and with each one of them I have a very different but also a very common relationship with. Firstly, they are all extremely brave, extremely smart, and they look into the future in a very, very unique way that I never experienced in my life before. So when Zowie invited me to see the RSA soon-to-be graduates at that point, as Sarah, I met Alice, and she first showed me her work. And of course, as everyone else, I got so excited about, I wanted to find out more things actually, and I found them. It was the curiosity, it was the unexpected, it was the excitement, it was that in our job lots of times we get not easily bored, but we want a bit of more excitement every time. So, and that was completely unexpected. So I think that at the same time, Sarah and I, we communicated about Alice, and of course, I know how curious Aphroditi is about those things, and she's someone incredibly brave as well. To not just be invited and see the work of Alice, but also at the same time making a decision which is quite bold, quite quick, and she saw all the potential of something that is completely unknown, because it wasn't a work where you have the final results already, seeing them. So you're saying that I'm going to support someone because I know that this is what I'm going to get in the end of this residency, or this is what the Onassis Foundation is going to be benefiting from. It's a completely unknown journey here, and this is extremely rare to find in every single industry, for someone to say, I give you that creative freedom, I give you the means, and I give you the ways to go and explore.
Yeah. Aphroditi, you said that...
Well, the thing is that I know that the word foundation sometimes actually creates a connection with money directly, and when you hear the word Onassis, you definitely make that connection. The good thing about the Onassis Foundation is not, and the bad thing for others, is that we're not sponsors. We're either producers or co-producers. Sure. And we do introduce ourselves as agitators of public curiosity. So we are there for the content, and we co-design the content, and we trust people, and we love people who trust us. And in that sense, when we built our schemes of residencies and internships and fellowships and scholarships, the Onassis Future, as we call it, we decided not to invest in the product, but in the process. So this is what we do. And we like that because we can invest in the process and the person. And that really, really takes that gravity out of the idea that I want you to produce 6 pairs of shoes in violet with 16 crystals each by the 16th of May, please. This is not the case. So we want the person who becomes an Onassis Fellow to have the freedom and to create different kind of non-freedom for his or herself in order to wake up in the morning, although she doesn't have to produce something on that day. So she has to find the discipline, she has to build the personality that it takes in order to be an artist, because it's not something that you can just live with an inspiration coming through your head and doing nothing with it. So I think the idea of personal development and professional development comes through this kind of investment. So you give the person actually time, and although it sounds so open, I think you give him or her something extremely hard.
It's incredibly
because
rare.
You have to be responsible for yourself. Of course we're here, and we are here to exchange. We're here to exchange questions to start with, because the thing is that we share common questions rather than answers. So I know that we will get more from Alice than she probably will. But this more will not be just related to her artistic production. It will have to do with all the answers that we have to think of and all the questions that we came up with because of her.
Can I say that it's interesting that I think there's so much expectations today. So when someone does a master's at the Royal College of Art, that's them and they're ready to go. And Sarah knows, as does Stavros, in the fashion art, not necessarily these days do you go to the kind of role, the level of design that maybe you would have done in the past. And so actually so many times when someone gets to the end of their MA, they've kind of got to this point, and actually it's quite phenomenal to now have that point, this space to then take that kind of beginning and now really almost study it, if that makes sense. And just as a model, it would be great to kind of spread this as a kind of concept, because we are at such a specific point where, whether it's for fashion and all the other industries, ultimately, even if we just look at Alice's project, the time that she's in Athens, it is about what she does for herself, but it's everybody that she affects, and everybody, and vice versa. So it's so enriching. But just the timing of that and the platform that this space gives, it's something to really, I think, for others to take note, actually.
So we touched briefly on basically how quick this process has been from Alice's graduate show to being in this incredible space and participating in part of the Biennale. And I wonder if that had to do with the incredible momentum that was caused behind people like Sarah, for example, posting a photo of your work on Instagram. You said before that when Sarah posted a picture from the graduate show, your followers... No, I love this. I think it's great. Sarah loves it too. So your followers went up by 2,000 people. What did that feel like?
I turned my phone on and flight mode.
It was very overwhelming.
It was really bizarre because I think when obviously I started working with this process, it was weird because I've never known how people would take it, and at the beginning it was not that it was like a secret thing, but it was like very much like I wasn't exposing a lot of it, and like I'd always been nervous for when it was coming to the RCA show because I had no idea like how people were going to interpret it, or like if people would like it or dislike it. And I think for me what was like the most overwhelming thing was just like the amount of support behind it, and like, that's why I'm so grateful for RCA, because it's the first time that I've had the space to like really like really find out what I wanted to do with my life and like what I was interested in, and sort of be supported to like go the direction that I wanted to. And that's what I loved, was that everyone was treated completely like an individual there, and it was supported them to what they wanted to achieve, and just to like have that chance was like an amazing opportunity.
You've spoken too about sort of the very, very personal way that you were taught and you were encouraged. Of course, you know, what you were doing is incredibly unique, but it does feel like, so you talked before about how, you know, each student did have this very unique and personal experience. But for you, how much does, you know, your relationship with the world around you, you know, your own body, your own physicality affect the work that you've created?
I think what I find like the most interesting is that like every person I've talked to, every person I've met has really influenced my work in like such different ways. Like I think the great thing about RCA was that I got an opportunity to work with so many people, like Louis, who was a second year that I worked with. Like his mind was just as crazy as mine, and he was so like just amazing. I used to like could watch him for hours.
What did he do?
He was just really experimental with material as well. So he made this, he'd made garments which were like made from like silicons and double tapes, which was stretched and then like completely molded, like their own like really organic way. But it was just like how he thought to get to that point was just so fascinating and like so interesting.
I'm conscious that you're quite careful about talking about your process because it's something that's very unique to your work. But can you tell us a little bit about how you managed to create those crystals and create that growth?
Magic?
Too secret?
Talent.
I think he was just like really focusing on like the body's like what was naturally in sweat. And I think like when sort of taking what I said before about the Bio Design Challenge, like taking that approach of maybe what another material was made of and then looking at other variations of that. And I think what was lucky for me, having like part of a chemistry background, was that sort of working also within sport, was that when you sweat there was obviously like different sort of like molecules that build it up from like your sodium, urea and lactic acid, and then like learning about the structures of that, then sort of taking it into the biodesign methodology that I'd worked, was then how I started to develop and think about these as structures.
It's so interesting that it's literally secretions from the human body that have created these beautiful.
But I think this is what is appealing to everyone, actually, you know, because it's something that we all have. It belongs to everyone. I mean, everyone can relate to looking at it. But I think that when someone first sees Alice's work, it combines three elements, which is fashion and is science and is art. And quite a lot of other people have tried to do the same thing. The thing is that Alice's work is aesthetically also very beautiful and very appealing to look at.
It's very poetic.
And it's very poetic. It's something that you want to see and see more coming out of it. Actually, you want to see how you can take this one and go very, very far away from it.
And I remember our first encounter when I asked you, is everybody's sweat the same?
Mm-hmm.
Is the ballet dancers and the refugees sweat the same? And what was so interesting about it was that you didn't say yes or no. You thought about the answer. And you actually told me, well, you know, sweat does not smell by itself. What makes it different is the skin, is each and every person. So it was like, of course it's not, but not all ballet dancers' sweat is the same either between them. Because it is something so personal that, you know, you need it on a person in order to have an identity, really. You needed to take it from one particular person in order to have the smell of the sweat. Otherwise, it doesn't smell. So this sweat wouldn't be in front of our eyes if you didn't take it in your kitchen.
I think one of the kind of definitions of art are things which are very personal and yet also very universal. And, you know, and poetry and everything, which I mean, any creator who's incredibly important will reveal something about themselves which everybody can relate to, and I think that's in your work. but it's in a work. It's in your work in a way that I've not seen before, and I think that's why here I mean, your aims are, aren't they, to cross art, science, and what's the other one? What's the third one? Fashion. No, fashion. You don't say fashion.
Well, you know what? Even when we do say, we change it all the time because we don't
so keep it open.
We want to keep it open. We don't want to be defined ourselves. We don't want to define other things. We don't believe in definitions. And the fact that nobody's trying to define what you do, I think is wonderful.
Yeah.
Nobody's trying to say, oh, this is art, this is fashion, this is an
Science.
installation, this
Yeah.
is something. No, and I think that don't ever put yourself into such a position to explain or anything. So I think that the best thing is that it is open. And the other interesting point here is also that we are all here today, although this is only the beginning. So yes, it did happen fast, because I'm not sure whether good things come to those who wait. But when I see somebody waiting for a long time, I have to tell him that nobody's coming. So I think that people who waited and it became a success was actually waiting for Godot, and you have to beg it for that. But I think that the fact that the beginning is so strong, I think that definitely puts some weight on you. But it's a weightless weight, because this will happen, then this will go away, and you have to go back to your kitchen. And you will be here for a long period of time, and we will be here not to support you, but to share your existence.
And of course, the fellowship that you're here in Athens for is for a year long. But I understand that there's sort of more, more moments. It's only really the beginning of a journey. Stavros, maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell, here is an exhibition. I mean, that we created, and it goes back exactly to all the comments that I had before, which is it's something very personal but also very universal. It's coming completely with Alice's experiences so far. So looking at the gym area, or the club techno, or the whole setup here is based on humans, is based on actual people participating into that. And we're putting back to the core element, the actual people and the human bodies. Alice has said something that has stuck in my mind. I think it's one of the most brilliant things that it has made me personally, to rethink a lot of things, which is bodies are still the best technologies we have. And for me, this really created something in me, inside me, and I think it has created something inside a lot of people, because we try to find out the innovations and how we live a better lifestyle, the well-beings and everything, but people are in the center of it. In that sense, we would like to have this idea, concept, or exhibition traveled, and adding to that lots of different elements and lots of different people that they can work together with Alice, create things, explore new ideas, because it's an idea. And in that sense, of course, it's in Athens right now, but we would see it traveling in lots of places in the world coming in the next year.
It's so funny to me that Alice's work is so based on sweat. Obviously, art and fashion inherently try and break taboos in a lot of ways, particularly taboos around the human body. And sweat is still such a taboo. If you see someone, a person sweating through their shirt on the tube, you automatically think, how disgusting.
Well, there's not just a tube. There are people sweating in other occasions, and there's a lot of pleasure in there. So I think that, this is always changing your references. Don't think of the tube. Think of
But this take, this turning something, Sarah, as you said, Alice's work very elegantly takes something repulsive and makes it glorious. Seeing this in an exhibition, seeing literally human sweat, it's quite an extraordinary thing to see. And that's exactly what you're saying. It's that, personal reaction to something that's universal, something that we all have. Do we wish that we could see our own sweat crystallized like Alice's?
Absolutely. I think that everyone can relate to it. Everyone wants to see something that so far they didn't think that it could take a formation like this and see where it goes. But I think it's also the fluids coming off the body, you know, like that Alice can explore further into, you know. Alice had a great idea about talking about tears, for example, which is something that, you know, you never know where that can perhaps go, and all the different elements attached to it. And I think this is something that only the future is going to tell with Alice's next year.
It's an extraordinary idea to use tears. What inspired you to think about that?
I think it's just sort of like looking at like different areas as well, and I think being in Athens as well is that I found that there's like so much emotion here, and I think like looking into tears as well and sort of researching it recently and sort of like looking under like what that is, what they look like, and the different ways that different things affect it. I think that's what has started to really interest me, and something that I obviously want to continue.
Can you still go for crocodile tears?
That makes me want to cry. It's so beautiful.
And is that something you want to explore, particularly in Athens?
There's so many things I want to explore. I keep like every person I meet, I get a new idea, and it's
Really?
just like
But you know, in Athens, with all that drama, tears is something very easy to find.
so everyone said
Joy, tears. Laughter, tears. Sorrow, tears.
Alice, how do you imagine your journey when you think about it? Do you have kind of a vision of what you want? There seems to be sort of no limits to what you might achieve and no expectations. But do you in your own head have an idea?
I think what I'm sort of like learning now is that I'm actually really excited about the unknown, and I'm really excited to like actually maybe not focus on like the outcome, but focus on what I learn about the city and like take all the influences from the people I meet, from like people from different backgrounds, from working alongside people, and like that. I think that's the best thing for me about being multidisciplinary is that you don't know what the final outcome is, because it's all the people you meet on that journey that affects what it then will become, and that's what's so exciting for me.
There's an incredible group of people as well, you know, supporting you and behind you. But, you know, what's it been like as well, working with so many people and being surrounded by so much support?
It's been like amazing. Like I can't have asked for a better group of people really to be with me. But I think what's just been amazing is that, I mean, it's the same as like the sweat work, is that everyone is just so different, and everyone has like such different views of how like things work, and has like different parts of knowledge, and like that's what I find the most interesting, is that just everyone has their own way of like seeing the world, and I just find it so fascinating.
So as ambassador for emerging talent at the British Fashion Council, what does it feel like for you to see this kind of a rare opportunity for a young designer?
God, it is so rare, because I mean, in my life, being as old as I am, normally I'm able to when I see somebody talented, I try to connect them with people I know within our existing fashion industry, and of course that means getting a job or getting a contract and actually just going into the industry. You know, often they set up on their own, and that's a whole other thing. But this is a unique pathway. There's never been a sort of a second step that I can think of, because you know, with young designers, they have great ideas and they can get eaten up by corporations and not actually get to express even what they're good at within massive corporations. So I mean, this is incredible, especially as it's open-ended, also in the medical field, the diagnostic field, in health. I know you have very, very strong feelings about, you know, the community value of what might come out of this, and this is, I can't think of anywhere else that's actually very... Yes, absolutely.
Please.
I'm really keen on, Sarah mentioned this idea of personal health. Of course, you're working with a hospital as well, but does your own, you know, personal considerations about body, how did that kind of, when you were first thinking about working so closely with movement and with sport, what was that like for you?
I think for me, it's just I'd always wanted to be part of my journey, and for me, it was really important to, if I was going to work with the body and the sweat, it was about learning as much as I could about my own body and seeing how that reacts. And like, that's what I found so fascinating, is that I started working with an amazing personal trainer, called Francesco,
Yeah.
and he's just like some weird guru who
Yeah.
just like
I've seen your body
literally.
transformation pictures. It's quite extraordinary.
It's just like he did like 2 years test of salt on himself, and it's what I find so fascinating is he just teaches me so many different ways that just by like diet, lifestyle, sleep can completely change like the whole exterior of your body, but what you sweat and just everything is just so fascinating.
And it's so extraordinary that these things, you know, you were talking to me so much about salt, about how you are transferring these thoughts about diet and body to creating pieces of work that people would call fashion. So do you see, you know, how much do you see students sort of thinking in that way, particularly using biomaterials?
In what that they. Sorry, I'm so
I'm interested in how many students you see sort of using ideas of food and natural processes and to create biomaterials in the way that Alice is doing.
I mean, not the way that Alice is, but I think definitely the idea of, I mean, it's so tricky. You have to kind of come away to be able to go back to it. And so definitely people are trying to find, we have a very insistent history right now where within the actual industry that's, you know, working and making and commercial. So how they respond to that is really difficult when they're so surrounded by so much noise and so much accessibility, not just to the now, but the history it's come from. So I think it's probably quite natural to try and find other routes that you can breathe out. And again, that has to be really personal to you. And that's why I think the question you asked Alice about herself, I think is super important. Because she's got so many ways forward, and actually just herself and her own relationship, I think there's a lot more there for her to kind of share and discover that's not just inward but also outward, and to other communities. Coming back to other students and bio particularly, I think it's a really powerful new place because you've got the kind of AI and the zero modern technology. So you've got the Bitcoin and you've got the whole world that's fed deeply financially because it's making fast returns, whereas bio's being less invested in because.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, bio moves so slowly, and it's very hard to control. So I remember the guy Oren. You met Oren, didn't you? I think so. Oren Katzenzer, they're two bio artists based in Australia, and he actually compared bio to couture,
really,
and fashion because he said, high luxury, because it's very hard to control in large mass, because bacteria has a way of doing the same thing, and so he was quite interested in those parallels. I think. I don't even know where my head's gone, but yes.
I'm thinking, what do you think the future
I know where my head was going. So sorry. No, what I'm interested in is with bio, why I think I'm interested in really promoting it, is bio is a deep, absolute relationship to the world that we live in. So, and if we look at the aesthetic of what Alice has played with, it's not that controlled crystal aesthetic. There's something I think people are also drawn to, because it's when you know what it's from, but also there's something really of its own, rather than it being very kind of geometrified. And so there's these two parallel aesthetics going on, one being deeply funded, but also has lots of darkness to it, and one that moves slowly that's being less funded, I feel, because it's a slower return, but its relationship to the body being the best technology, and our relationship to our planet. This is really important, I think.
But I agree with this. One thing I think is extraordinary about this space that you've given, Alice, is that it's open access. Because this kind of research is normally done in high secrecy because it's so valuable. And the second thing about that is that I think that it's the whole point of something like this is that young children and parents and everybody can see that this is a new pathway, it's a new field, and to have the opportunity for you to inspire others is amazing because you don't see this work. You literally don't see this work. I've
And
No, you'd have to be a real specialist, wouldn't you, to get into those secret labs. I mean, I imagine Porton Down, we've got other, terrible ministry where nasty experiments are done on, nerve gases and things. So to bring it into an arena where people can relate to it, I think is really important.
And I think that, because I do remember talking to you about our relationships to the health field as well, when I told you we have created a hospital in Athens. I will take you there. I want you to see what it means to be in a hospital. And seeing all these creatures that you have created, I cannot even call them objects because they are too much alive with all this threat there. I was thinking of the fact that the Onassis Foundation is now building a new hospital in this city, a transplant hospital for solid organs. And there are people out there who are waiting for somebody to call them, or they carry a bag with them when there is this great message telling them that somebody's dying and there is a donor, and that donor can give you his liver. But this person who's going around with this little bag would definitely prefer to be wearing something that will give him a sign telling him that a transplant is there for you. Or that in this best technology that we have, well, this is the best that we have, but it's not that good. It's very problematic. And the necessity, the desire, and the right to be able to wear something that can protect you or give you a sign that something is seriously wrong about you at that point, even when you're not a tennis player, but when you're actually a patient, that would mean a lot. And this is a growing demand. So, I mean, one of the new things that we're doing now in Athens is actually that we're creating a big makerspace, a big lab. And we will be focusing on fabrics, for instance, that will be related to medical issues. So I think that you are staying here for a year, but you're not. I don't know when you're coming back, but I think none of you is leaving.
I'm conscious that we're nearing our time, but I did just want to touch on, and Stavros, perhaps you could just tell me a little bit more about this, about the need and the desire for there to be this bridge between the UK and the rest of
The catalyst.
Europe. The catalyst, there is Stavros.
I have been extremely, again, lucky. I'm going to go back to that. To be someone that I lived in Athens and I'm living currently in London. I know the best of these two cities, these two worlds, and I think that there is a lot to learn from each city. I actually am in a good way jealous of Alice that she has this opportunity to be in this city and have the time, the means and the freedom to be able to absorb it, learn how to live here and learn out of it. In the same way, she has the possibility to go back to a wonderful city like London is with all these amazing people, because London is a multicultural place where has this amazing exchange of ideas and knowledge that happens there. So I think in that sense, I like to see that we, yes, it's incredible that there is this bridge, but at the same time, if you see it, we all are citizens of the same world, and we can travel and we can build and we can do things in any place, in any city. If I see around me, I see people coming from so many different places. There are people behind that did excellent work here, like Mark Boyce, who did like the set design, and he did an amazing project. Chris Osiris with a film documentary, and of course Nick Knight with an amazing photography, of this exhibition. And there are going to be more and more people attached to this idea, and they're coming from different places in the world. And this is what it's about. It's a universal.
Yeah. I think the key thing that we've really touched on here is that while we're celebrating Alice tonight and the opening of her exhibition, it's very much been a collective process of this exhibition. The number of people, Stavros, that you've just mentioned, who have collaborated, and everyone here. Alice, it's been incredible to hear your story. I'm so grateful to have been here. I'd just like to ask everyone to join in a round of applause for our panel and Alice.